Okay, we're live. This is the OSRA Daily Scrum for Tuesday, January 6th, 2015. Here we have Andre, Christian, Robbie, Viv, and myself. So let's do the Scrum first. Try to keep it quick. Robbie, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I haven't really been doing much OSRA stuff today. Actually, I've been going through those RSpec links that you shared with us yesterday evening, Nick. So I'm now an expert on RSpec.
All right.
Well, a lot of things don't seem as unusual as they have appeared. I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
Good. Good.
But
that must be a good feeling too.
Yeah.
Okay. Andre, let's go to you.
Yeah, nothing exciting today. Yesterday, if that was yesterday, I'm horribly confused this time. Yesterday, I think we paired with Christian introducing or rather correcting our code according to those comments that you left in our pull request. And we eventually, the tests that we discussed yesterday for the create method without touching the database, we changed it for the definition of for the description of the test that Christian wrote. And it seems like it's a shorter description, which does the trick. So the test passes, and there doesn't seem to be any interaction with the database. So yeah, Christian is happy, I'm happy.
All right. Christian, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, also I finished the Cucumber test for authentication, OSRA 3.15. So I updated all the code review.
Okay, sounds good. And Viv, what about you?
I just saw your comments on the PR that I pushed up. I just read them very quickly before coming online. So it looks to me, so I'm going to be working on that next. It looks to me that you want to have me do the test without having the database, and you want deeper use. You don't want any tests on the controller, and you want like deeper, more complex testing for the views. Have I got that right? I just skimmed it over very quickly.
The controller, actually, I had a question whether or not you thought that a controller test was warranted, because I'm pretty sure that there isn't one, right? You didn't create one, so...
There's a controller test, there's a partner controller test, and a views test.
Is that right? How did I miss it?
Is that what you're asking?
I'm trying to find the controller spec, and I don't think you have it.
Very nice.
The only spec that I see...
Yeah.
The only spec that I see is the view spec.
No, there's a controller spec in there. That's. Let me look at your comment. You had a comment about blah blah blah. There was something here. Yeah, comment by Nikita. Does this warrant a controller spec? Issuing get to index calls partnered up paginate with right params. It looks like that's where you were commenting on that.
So I left that in the controller.
There's a partner. There's a partner in that namespace for and specs in HQ. There's a controller underscore. What is it? I'd have to pull it up, but it's underscore spec. I think it's partner underscore controller underscore spec.rb file.
So it should be in the spec folder, right?
Yeah, it should be in the spec, and it's an RSpec 1.
Okay, because the only file that I see from the spec folder is spec views HQ partners index spec, the view spec.
No, there were 2 tests because I had a total of 6 that I had to go through. I'll pull that up. But anyway, yeah, so I'll look into that. I'm pretty sure that went up because I tested everything before I test absolutely everything before pushing it up. So.
Okay. Well,
but anyway, go ahead.
yeah, my message is actually because I was under the impression that there was no controller spec at all, and I was suggesting that maybe there should be one.
Huh? Up a little bit.
And then the other comment that I left, that was on your view spec.
Yeah.
And there was the link to an article by the guy who actually wrote the will paginate gem.
The Mislav.
Yeah. And it's not just about not hitting the database, which is a concern, though. I have to say that I know that you've reduced the number of hits. You've reduced the number of models that you're instantiating from 60-something to 17. But anyway, he describes that there's a way to do it without hitting the database at all. But he also points out the sort of the necessary things to test. So given that he is the authoritative source on this, I wonder if it might be worthwhile to follow his instructions.
I did actually look at that page. I'll look at it further.
Okay.
I'll pull that up. I did look. I'm looking at your unique path, and I did pull up his will paginate view testing. I'm trying to remember exactly what sort of test he was doing. If it was just RSpec, it was RSpec and Cucumber. I remember looking at it. But okay, yeah, will do. I'm just a little concerned about that controller spec that I definitely wrote.
Okay.
So just I'll pull that up. So yeah, I have no blockers. I'm just going to work on your comments and push that back up.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so I'll wrap up this cron by saying that basically all I've done today, I guess as per usual, is code review. I did a little bit. I did a little bit of task management on Jira. Just moved things around that needed to be moved from one column to the next. I also reached out to the client, and this is something that probably doesn't concern anyone at this point. But in our status models, so we have status, orphan status, and orphan sponsorship status. There are 3 or 4 records in each one of these tables, and each object has a name attribute, which is the status name, so active, inactive, on hold, etc. But it also has a code, and that's an integer 1, starting with 1. And looking forward, especially thinking about replacing these models with enums, which is something that you might have heard me talk about before. I wondered if those codes are at all used by the client. So I asked them about it. It turns out that they have no use for them at all. So it must have been some kind of an early design spec that was the reason why they were implemented in the first place, but we don't use them anywhere in the application. The client has no use for them themselves, so we can remove those at our leisure, I suppose, but certainly if we do any kind of more serious refactoring on the models, then that will be a good time to do it. And that's it for me. Yeah, one more thing I quickly checked today. The production server, and there have been no changes since Sunday. So there are still 49 orphans, 4 partners, and I think 9 users in the system. And that's it. Hey, Brian's here, so let's let Brian finish.
Okay. I was doing the 318, 319, and 323. Those are in code review, and I was looking at some feedback left by others. Unfortunately, I missed yesterday, so I'm not up to speed on what we're going to be doing in this sprint as much as I'd like to be.
Well, the sprint hasn't started yet. You haven't missed that part.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Tonight's the planning.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. I thought I might get round to trying to do some of those, but in the end of the day, I didn't get time. I know we talked about it at the end of last week, that 318, but you got it sorted out then?
Yeah, I was leaving them unassigned until I was actually ready to start them, and I had enough time to. I just did them one after the other, and they were still unassigned, so I just took each one and sent them through.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for the Scrum portion? No, doesn't sound like it. Okay, well let's see if we can manage sprint planning without Pavel holding our hand here. So I think.
Nikita.
Yes.
Nick.
Yeah.
Quick thing. I just pulled up the I pulled up OSRA that I had in my branch, and the testing that I did for the will paginate was all in the views. I thought I had called that will paginate to receive it in the controller, but it was called in the views.
Okay.
It originally was in the controller, but at this final iteration, everything was in the views. There were multiple tests in the views and not in the controller spec.
Okay.
So yeah, got that.
All right. So what's on GitHub then is the correct version?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else for the sprint, or sorry, for the Scrum, then let's get right to it. I believe that we start by completing the sprint. So this is our sprint 8, whose main goal was to go live, which we did. It was the end date is half an hour from now, but we can probably go ahead and call that done. 7 issues were done. We have 7 incomplete issues that will be returned to the top of the backlog, and 1 partially complete issue will be returned to the top of the backlog. Okay. Here's our velocity chart. Oh, sorry, burn down chart rather.
What is that spike from at the end?
That's what I'm wondering here. Oh, I know. It was actually so we had OSRA 300, which was the separation of the father name into 2 separate ones, and it was in the done column, but it was still flagged, and you cannot remove a flag without when something's marked as done. So I temporarily pushed it into reopen and took off the flag and then closed it again. So that's it right there.
You got recorded.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we only had 3 story points, I guess much to Andrei's dismay. But I'm not entirely sure that this sprint coming up will be any different in that respect. Okay, so let's somehow create a new sprint, right? Does anybody remember how to do that?
No. If you click on create, that's only for an issue, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Issues.
Where's Pavel?
When we need him so much.
Where is Pavel? Okay. This seems like a button here. There are no active sprints. Start one would be really useful. Boring. This is.
What about asking Google or this? Yeah.
Should be there somewhere.
This is embarrassing. I've seen him do it.
What?
Well, 8 times.
8 times, yes. 7 times rather, or.
No, I don't think we're in the right place here. Okay, if anybody feels like Googling in the meantime, Please do.
This.
You should.
Let's see who gets there first.
Yeah.
I'm looking too, and I haven't found it yet.
To create a new sprint, click the Agile link down arrow in the top navigation bar.
Yeah.
Then select your preferred board from the resulting drop-down menu. Your board will be displayed. Click Plan. Click the Create Sprint button. I've never seen the plan.
Ha! There it is. It's a backlog.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So where was the plan?
Okay, so let's go through this again so that everybody knows what happens here. Let's say if we're here, and this is our
That Create Sprint button isn't showing up on mine in the same place.
Where does it show up?
It doesn't. It might be certain user types, I guess. I don't know.
It's possible. I know that Craig has added me as an admin, so maybe that's why. Anyway, so yeah, you go once there is no active sprint open, you go to the backlog, which is called plan in different configurations, and then you get this create sprint button.
Yeah. Project administrator permissions are required to add a sprint.
Well, there we go. Well,
so we don't have that.
Good thing at least one of us is here. Huh?
So how many of you has the admin permissions? Pavel, you, and Craig?
Yeah, Craig is the creator of the board, and yeah, I'm assuming it's Pavel and myself then.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Sprint 9. Does anybody have any kind of clever title for it?
Go Rails. But we'll be going Rails for a long time.
Yeah. Well, maybe we don't need to get clever here.
Less AA?
Sorry, say it again.
Less active admin?
Less AA, yeah. Well, the problem is that there is never less AA until there is none. There's always...
less by a percentage of the total.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if we measure it like that. Okay, so let's start going through the tasks in the backlog and thinking about what to do with them. So this one, make sponsorship inactivation and orphan status change atomic. Does everybody remember what that refers to? And if you do, then how relevant is that for this sprint?
Well, until we have a goal for the sprint, I'm not sure.
Well, I think the goal. Okay, fair enough. Let's look at our strategies. Let me bring them up. Actually, you won't see that. Let me do that instead. Have you taken a look at this meeting summary, Brian?
What was that?
Have you taken a look at our retrospective, the document that we came up with?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
So basically, what we discussed yesterday was that our strategy for this sprint, since we're waiting to receive any kind of significant feedback from the client on what we have delivered, and you know, we're still keeping an eye out for any big bugs or problems that they discover as they start using the application more and more. It's probably not prudent yet to start development on new features, new stories. So we will postpone starting on phase 1 for some time. Plus, the other requirement is that we need to plan phase 1 with the client, prioritize the tasks that will go into it, etc. And until all of that happens, and we're sort of sitting, you know, being ready to deal with any issues that pop up, but at the same time with not much else to do, the decision was that this is the perfect opportunity to push Rails as far as we can. in these 2 weeks. So that is the strategy, the overall strategy for Sprint 9. And as far as the actual actions, obviously we want to finish the partner switch. This is what we've been working on.
Nick, quick question. Could you post that link in the chat so that I can connect to it? I can't find it. It's under supports team meeting summaries.
Yeah, it's under team meeting summaries, and it's Sprint 8 retrospective. But the link is in the chat now. So yeah, and once we finish the partner model switch, then we need to decide on how to proceed from that. And based on, we had a short discussion about this last night, based on their dependencies, it was decided, well, it was thought, let's say, that perhaps the order which we should move in is user. It's the simplest model on which nothing depends, followed by orphan, and then finally sponsor. So this isn't strictly in order of complexity, because of course orphan is far more complex than sponsor. But actually, I'm not sure. There aren't any dependencies between orphan and sponsor. So sponsor depends on user, because when you create a sponsor, you want to assign a user as an agent. But as far as orphan and sponsor, I think they can come in whichever order.
Yeah, they can be created independently.
I believe so.
Yeah.
There's also the pending orphan list and the.
Oh yeah, there's plenty others. Well, there's plenty of other work to do. I mean, sponsorship is another big one. It's not here, but sponsorship obviously comes after orphan and sponsor have been implemented. Pending orphan list, pending orphan. I don't know. Do they come after orphan or before? I would say after, because they, that's the import process that is tied very tightly to the orphan model. It relies on the orphan model already being implemented with all of its validations.
Well, we're not going to change the model, though.
No, we're not going to change the model.
I mean, not for this task. I can see
No.
it being factored, but that's separate.
Yeah. Well, pending orphan, or pending orphan list rather, has some views that are called up during the import process. Pending orphan does not. But I don't know, it seems to me that we should have the orphan model in place before we start working on the import process, and the import process hits pending orphan list and pending orphan. So
I think you want to sort out that import stuff, the changes I'd made, Nick, before starting on the pending orphan list. Active admin, because they're very much connected there.
Yeah, I agree with that, Robbie. Well, I keep saying it, I know, and I think at some point we just need to schedule something, because like I said, I would like for you, Craig, and myself, and anybody else who's interested in the importer to have a discussion. And I think we just need to come up with a time when all three of us, or at least the three of us, are available. So for a particular, for a particular day after the Scrum, we say that there's no other discussion, or at least we will not participate in any other discussion. We'll discuss the importer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably free the rest of this week, so I think it will depend on Craig's availability.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounded like Craig might not be very available for this sprint altogether, so we'll have to, I guess we'll probably have to work around his schedule then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I think we're looking too far ahead at this point. I think user, orphan, and sponsor we should probably work on user first, and after that we can either tackle orphan or sponsor. It probably doesn't make a difference. And I think it's after orphan is implemented that we should think about pending models. Any disagreements, agreements, strong support?
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so with that in mind then, we want to finish partner, we want to implement user, and since user is such a tiny model, is it realistic to say that we want to at least start working on a sponsor model?
So you envision that during this sprint we'll be able to finish the orphan?
Well, if they come in the order that they're here, then we finish partner, we finish user, and we start working on either orphan or sponsor.
Okay.
I think, well, I suppose it doesn't really make much of a difference. I mean, orphan is the most complex model that we have.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to save it for last, or can we tackle it?
I thought the idea was that the orphan is more independent model than the sponsor. That for a sponsor you'll need to have some link to an orphan.
Sponsor doesn't have to have a link to an orphan.
Yeah, only when you create sponsorship.
Exactly, yeah. And actually the other thing that occurs is that, of course, there are addresses associated with orphan. So when we create views for the orphan, we need to decide how to handle address information. Do we use accept nested attributes for? Do we do form objects? I think that maybe the orphan model should be left until later, so we have a better handle on, how we want to implement all the different facades and form objects and things like that.
If I could propose that we do user and then sponsorship and then sponsor, because sponsorship I don't think may or may not have views, but it's at least going to have a controller or two.
Can you create a sponsorship without views for either sponsor or orphan?
Yeah, as long as your method on your HTTP is not get. I think there's a post or something that happens. There's some kind of sponsorship controller going on. Let me see. I'm gonna look.
There is, but the way I'm thinking about this is that for sponsorships, we definitely want to have cucumber test, for example. And the way that sponsorship creation and termination have been handled so far is that they rely heavily on the sponsor show view. Because once you create a sponsorship, you're taken to the sponsor show page, and it's from the show page that you also terminate a sponsorship.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but you can also mark your cucumber test or parts of it as pending. If the object doesn't exist yet. Because it's at some point, things are interdependent.
But sponsor is not dependent on anything.
Well, then how about user sponsor sponsorship?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that runs closer to what I was thinking of. If we agree on user sponsor, then I think that's all we need to decide for this sprint. I'm not sure that we will get much further than that, considering that partner is still not done.
Yeah.
Well, partner is close to done, and sponsorship are both going to be pretty small. But yeah, either way.
I mean, there's nothing stopping us from adding tasks to the sprint. If we've finished everything that we've taken on, so
remember in your sponsor, or was it in the sponsor view that you had in ActiveAdmin you also displayed the orphans that were sponsored by this particular sponsor.
Yep.
So would you sort of include some parameters of the sponsor, like some attributes of the sponsor, and then implement orphan and then go back to sponsor?
Well, the orphan model is already implemented, right?
Yeah, okay.
The orphan model and the sponsorship model, they exist. So we can create a sponsorship. For example, when we're working on sponsor, we can create sponsorships through the active admin interface. And we'll see, or using Factory Girl in tests.
Yeah.
And because those models are in place, they should show up in the Rails side as well. Okay, so let's go back to our Jira board. So now when, let's say, if that's what our sprint is, then it seems then that something like OSRA 299, this atomic inactivation of sponsorship and changes of status, probably does not get priority at this point. So we're hoping that nothing ever happens in the meantime, so that if you terminate the sponsorship, you will also set the sponsor's orphan count correctly and change the orphan's status. They're not currently wrapped in a transaction, so theoretically things can happen between those three events that will interfere, basically create these logical lapses. But it's not a probable event, so can we live with the... Well,
If I could share just my opinion, I would prefer to maybe hold off on 299 and focus more on 324 or 310, aside from the Rails migration part.
Okay. Let's...
Well, 310 is security related, and 324 is the bug Robbie found.
Yeah. Okay, they're now at the top here. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's first go through the tasks that we already had during the previous sprint. They were in our previous sprint and they got carried over to this one. So 299, it seems that people don't think it's a priority, so let's send it to the bottom of the backlog and not include it. OSRA 244, I sent it to the client today. They can look at the filter panels and decide if everything looks and works to their satisfaction. So this should be done very soon. OSRA 238, refactor orphan importer. I guess it really goes together with Robbie's OSRA 240. But it seems to me that this refactoring of the orphan importer falls into the same category as refactoring existing models. It would be a good thing to do, but since we're focusing on Rails, it does not get priority.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, to be honest, I think some of this has probably come in through, Craig wanting to drive the import of the headers in the spreadsheet as well. So I think probably some of it has been done a wee bit under 240.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, leave the rest until we take a good assessment about what still remains to be done and how important it is.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds fair to me. OSRA 258, refactor complex cucumber steps. So this refers to the existing active admin cucumber steps, and it doesn't sound to me like we should do this at all, since active admin and the Cucumber steps that go with it are going to go bye-bye. So they're there, they do the job, they don't look pretty, they're too low level, but they work, and maybe we don't need to spend any time improving them. Does that sound right to everyone?
Agree.
Okay. So in fact, I think what I'm going to do is delete this task altogether. OSRA 263, refactor sponsor show view.
263 is probably going to be obsolete as soon as we make a parent task for the Rails sponsor show view. Plus, I don't think it's in the Epic.
No, it's not. It's back when we were just labeling AA migrate.
The other one of those that said refactor partner show view has been deleted or at least not worked on.
Okay, so let's delete this one too.
Yeah.
All right. Refactor orphan spec for speed and unitness. Again, doesn't sound like a priority. Moving appropriate code. So there's work that's been done on this. We definitely want to resolve that, so that stays. Partner, that stays, and that's it. So what we can do is, there's a way to drag this thing, I think. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I basically inadvertently ended up including these two, but this is definitely a bug that needs to be fixed. And there is a security issue with not upgrading to 2.2, Brian.
Yeah, it's pretty minor. It's less of a security and more like a denial of service. Ruby 2.2 garbage collects symbols now, and that's effectively the thing that. So when you make an HTTP request and you've got your query with your params in it, and if you put the params in the brackets or whatnot, if you use that notation, then each param you send to Rails, the thing inside the brackets gets turned into a symbol. And if you continue to spam queries to Rails and it continues to make symbols for each of your unique values that you've sent it, you can, since they don't get garbage collected, you can actually blow the server up. It's a memory leak effectively.
Right.
And 2.2 eliminates that vulnerability by garbage collecting symbols, so you don't have to do any convoluted stuff like active admin does to mitigate that. They have a whole section of tests just for that, which we weren't doing any of. And I didn't suggest it because I knew 2.2 was coming.
Okay.
So that's kind of the deal with that.
Yeah, but it definitely sounds like something that we want to take care of then.
But I presume that this site wouldn't be on the high-risk site for a denial of service attack?
Probably not.
Unless someone's got a personal vendetta against one of the guys.
Yeah, maybe a dictator of a certain nation might be the only candidate for DOSing this.
Anyway, we should be erring on the side of caution, right? Okay, so that belongs in the sprint as well.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think the other one about the transaction is more likely to happen than this denial of service attack.
So when you upgrade to Ruby 2.2, does this mean that, well, the gems definitely have to be updated then? Is there a possibility that we'll have problems with gems, like some gems would not be current enough for Ruby 2.2, or is this?
Well, that's part of the task, is that you try to do the upgrade, and if there are dependencies that are unable to coexist with it, then we probably postpone the upgrade.
Yeah, it's whoever takes this story, their job is to answer that.
Yeah. That's actually, I think you might have had discussion about it, but I only found out about it today, that the chore that was given to, what was his name, Matt, I think, about adding foreign keys.
Yeah.
That, yeah, it cannot be done until we upgrade to Rails 4.2, but we cannot upgrade because ActiveAdmin is locked to below 4.2.
I guess the idea was that it's unnecessary because we can at some point, well, because soon rather, we will upgrade to 4.2 and it allows the foreign keys. I guess that was the idea.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, we cannot upgrade until either ActiveAdmin is updated or we get rid of it.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of activity in ActiveAdmin about trying to make things work with Rails 4.2, but I was looking into it a little bit, and it looks like they're pretty far away from that happening.
So let's see who gets there first, us or them.
Yeah.
Robbie, to address your concern about wrapping those things into a transaction, I share it. I think it's something that there is a risk. Basically, if you lose connection to the database while those things are happening, you can end up with broken logic, effectively.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's probably more likely that there's some sort of thing that happens on a server or something that throws something out of kilter. That is probably more likely than a deliberate denial of service attack on this site.
Sure.
Yeah.
You say it's more likely?
I think servers go up and down, and if you get a server crashing,
okay,
at the time when you're in the middle of a transaction, you might not get the consistency around that transaction in the database, or if some bug happens in some bit of software, throws a wobbler, and the system reboots at a certain time, runs out of memory or something, and system reboots, and one of your saves has gone to the database, but because it's not wrapped in a transaction, the consistency of the whole thing is disrupted, broken.
So, do we want to take a quick vote to see what we all think is more important?
Well, first of all, let's say that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can definitely be both. For what it's worth, 299, there is code already to make it work. It was in code review, but the discussion around it kind of petered out. So I actually closed the pull request, but I do have working code that addresses it. So it's, if team members are interested in it enough to do code review on my pull request, then we can bring it back and it might be resolved very quickly. But there are also alternative approaches, and some of them would be better implemented once we're refactoring the models. So it's kind of a very open-ended thing.
Well, if you've got the code already written, Nick, I'd be happy to try doing code review on it, if you like.
Okay. I'll reopen the pull request then. And what does everybody else think? Is this something that people see as a priority, or it's it's something that can wait?
It's the sort of thing that is unlikely, but if it happens, it causes disruption. That's the problem. And then you have to go and fix up the live database and everything.
The other
it
thing
is unlikely.
The other way I can see it being a problem, besides the server crashing, is if two people try to make the same change at the same time, two different users try to update the same thing. It is unlikely, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there are too many users, have they, Brian, though?
Yeah, I don't. We could probably bet on that's neither of those are going to happen, but
Yeah.
it is an edge case.
How about
It's
how
good.
about
It is actually good principles to wrap things like this in transactions. It should be something that should be done as a matter of course, I think, rather than.
yeah? I agree with you, Robin. That actually that was part of my maybe enthusiasm for this is that to write cleaner code, not just to fix this particular problem, but to follow good practice.
Mm.
Okay, how about this? If nobody objects, I will put this back into the sprint, and I'll reopen the PR. And if nothing happens on the PR for, I don't know, a few days, then I'll take that as a message, and we won't come back to it, at least not for a while. But perhaps it can be in there, at least for a time. Okay, let's have a quick look through the backlog to see if there's anything else that should go into this sprint, and after that we can start creating the Rails related stories.
What is
So,
orphan card
yeah.
display? It looks old.
What is orphan card display?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the phase 1 stories. Yeah. Basically, the client is their description. Yeah. So they basically what they want is, instead of getting the entire orphan show view, which displays every single attribute about the model, they want to come up with some kind of a succinct way to display the relevant information. And I think they talk about card display because maybe this is something that they intend to share with sponsors. So I think it's related to the two subsequent tasks, the PDF generation.
Nick, did the team discuss there was a UI that came up, a UI diagram that came up for how the front end should look? It kind of sounds like this orphan card display, which is why I thought of it. And did you come to any decisions, or was this discussed?
Yeah, we talked about it. It's a fairly early prototype yet, so the UI designer who's come up with it has cautioned us not to start coding on it yet. He would like to come up with a couple more views maybe to make sure that everything is kind of flowing along and fits together.
Do you think that would work with this orphan card display if he was told to sort of, give a UI for the orphan card that would work well for this OSRA 137? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
I think once we get to the story, I think we would definitely like to have him on board if he's available. And the same goes for maybe these PDF files that we will be generating. If it's some kind of a mailer that they actually physically send to the sponsor or somehow share with them, then again having a UI designer for that would be fantastic. But at this point, these are all phase 1 stories, and for the time being, we're not taking any of those on yet because it's very possible that the client will decide that there are different priorities for phase 1. These were created at the very beginning of the project, so they're out of touch with reality, let's say. If anybody sees anything that they would like to call out and maybe to have a discussion about, then
we don't have a task for the facade, right? We need to create a new task for that, to refactor the entire controller into using the facade class.
Which controller?
The partner, yeah. Oh. Well, after it's finished.
Well, that's one option. The other option would be to implement, let's say, if it's the user doesn't need a facade, there is nothing there. Sponsor might. So the other option is to have one controller, sort of the way we have it now, and to create another controller with facades, and to see what everybody thinks. the alternative would be maybe in the partner's controller. I think that's what we originally talked about, is that, for example, since you and Andre were working on new and create, that if you were interested in experimenting with a facade, you could have used a facade for that. And
Yeah, we decided that this should go into a new task and
yeah.
to cover everything, edit, new, everything.
Okay. Well, the thing with facades is that, as far as I can tell, not everybody is sold on them yet. So there is the possibility that whoever works on a facade and refactors the entire controller might actually lose that work in the end, if the overall decision, if the overall team decision goes against it. So I would like to see at least an attempt to use facades, but I would be, I don't know, I wouldn't be happy if that task got assigned to somebody and then it was decided not to use facades after all.
You want to do
Still, it's a good experience for who creates it. So.
Well, I agree with that. So if somebody wants to have that experience, speak up.
Yep, who wants to pair with me?
We can try pairing via Gitpong if you're interested, Christian. Doing it live might be a bit tricky for me.
Well, me and Andre are usually doing like, one is driving and writing everything, and the other one is just commenting and agreeing and coming up with suggestions, maybe. And it works fine so far. I don't see the point where we should just send the file, the drive to the other one, just so he can write 2 lines of code and then send it back.
Well, I didn't mean that we would do it. I meant that we would do it asynchronously. So you write something in the morning, I write something in the afternoon.
Oh.
Yeah, because I think my availability might be very different from yours.
It might be a bit difficult for coordination.
Yeah. Okay, who wants to live pair then?
I think I would. I just don't know how free I'll be this week.
Christian, how about we create this task and assign it to you, and then you proceed in whichever way works out best for you. If you can pair live with Andre, or if you want to write a bit of code and then get feedback from myself or from somebody else, whatever works, basically.
Well, create it and don't assign it until I start, or maybe somebody else will want to start. And
okay.
Okay.
So Christian, what sort of times are you free during the day?
Well, if we agree on a time for, let's say, tomorrow, I can make it work, or after tomorrow, or any day of the week.
Right. Okay. I mean, I would be interested in some time, but I don't know anything about facades at all.
Well, I'm at the same level as you are, so it will be interesting.
We'll be sharing ignorance, no?
Well, it's I don't know. We'll see. I also have to read about it a little before we start.
Yeah, there were a couple of links that were shared recently that I think have good information in them.
I ordered last week a book about Ruby design patterns, and unfortunately it takes 3 weeks to get to Romania because I'm at the end of the world here. But that would be interesting to use.
What's the title of the book?
Ruby design patterns, I think. It was recommended by the SAS class.
Who's the author of it, do you know?
One of the SAS lecturers, probably?
I don't think so.
It sounds like a more classic title than that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. There is, I think, is that the one? There is a new edition that just came out.
Yeah, I think so.
It's in the link in the chat.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I've created this task. It's a subtask of.
Is it Ross Olson?
Yeah, the old book.
Ross Olson.
Yeah.
2007. Yes.
What was I thinking about? There's a book. Well, okay, never mind. We'll let's stay focused here. Okay, so we got down to what's around here. Like I said, if anybody sees something that ought to be taken on, speak up.
Well, the opposite of that, OSRA 7.1, is that relevant anymore?
Refactor orphan feature. No, it definitely is not.
I don't even think orphan.feature is going to be around for a long time.
Well, a new one might be, or should be, or can be.
Well, then can you edit the name and put admin/orphan.feature?
Well, I just deleted the thing, so
That works too.
yeah. So it's refactoring. That's definitely further down the line. Refactoring cannot do. I mean, there is a way to do this. There is a gem that does it. But since this is baked into Rails 4.2, it seems it would be a shame to bring a gem in just because we're locked into active admin.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't see anything else that needs to go into the sprint.
What was that, 297?
297. It's a refactor, basically.
Oh, okay. Well, we probably just need to create tests then in the Epic, right?
You mean for refactoring?
No, for the remove AA Epic. There's already one for partner. Don't we need to make another one for user and whatnot?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, yeah, I guess I misunderstood. Okay, so these are all the tasks that we have right now.
So the one that you discussed with Christian about facades, did you actually write anything down?
Well, there is a task or subtask within OSRA 288, but I didn't write anything in the description. Let's go here. Okay, remove AA. So let's create a new issue. So create Rails controller and views for user. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And routes. Sorry, controller views and routes.
Right.
Forgot about that the first time around.
Hey, I'm going to also do the same sponsor.
You are cutting off. Hello?
Should we create another story or changing sponsor?
Nick, we can't hear you.
Should we create another story? 4?
Another story and sponsor then, yeah.
Another story for changing sponsor to Rails. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I just needed to shut up for a moment. Okay. So going back to our sprint. How do I get out of here? Like this. Okay, so obviously there are many subtasks that will be added to OSRA 327 and OSRA 328. I don't think we need to do them right now, but as soon as people have time, as soon as they're finished with whatever it is that they're working on currently, and they're looking for something else to take on, they can start creating subtasks within these stories, assigning them to themselves and working on them. Does everybody agree that the pattern that the path that we've taken with partner is a solid one? Can we follow it more or less exactly the same for doing user and sponsor?
Yeah, I agree. If I can add something, a lot of the tasks that were under 288 were things that I was working on one thing and realized we needed something else, so I made a task for it real quick. If you guys are working on something and you see something missing, just take 30 seconds and make a task for it so we don't forget about it, so somebody else could start working on it. Or
yeah, very, very valid point. Okay,
So I guess I don't think that we will get to the sponsor model very quickly, like not probably within the next week. But before we get to sponsor, we probably need to try this facade approach on the partner, right? And see whether it works and whether we need to apply this to sponsor as well.
Yeah, because user, like I said, it's so simple that I don't think facades will be warranted at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves partners our sort of test bed for that. Well, it'll be up to Christian or whoever actually starts working on this, but I don't think that we necessarily need to refactor the entire controller in one go for using facades. I think we can do it in a couple of actions, or maybe just a single action. Let the team have a look at it, have a discussion about whether it helps or hurts before proceeding on with the rest. But yeah, we ideally we would like to iron out, or at least to have discussed questions about things like that, facades, form views, or form objects, and so on before we move on to the more complicated models like sponsor and orphan.
is there a task for that facade?
There is no, yeah.
Okay, good.
Can you create it?
It's in here. It's a subtask of OSRA 288.
Where's
It's OSRA 326.
Okay. Okay. Good. I'm getting more and more curious, so I would love to play with you, Christian.
Yeah, sure. Would be fun.
All right.
Let me first read about it, and then we can talk when we can talk.
I also need to read about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything else? How does it, I think, well, Andre, you'll be disappointed again because there's not a single point, not a single story point here.
I thought that Jira counts only points, but apparently it also counts issues that were resolved. So it still patted us on the back, like it said that 7 issues were resolved.
Yeah, sure. I mean, our burn down chart is going to be non-existent basically for this sprint.
Okay.
So again, your earlier concern that our velocity might be a bit difficult to judge is valid. I think once we get to probably sprint 10, and we start taking on stories that the client will have submitted, we will need to be maybe a little bit cautious about how many of them we take on. Yeah.
Do people use these trackers like when they are in the maintenance mode, when they do not have stories coming from clients, but when they are doing like tasks or improvements, something that are not graded?
Yeah, there is actually, so Pavel again is the one to talk about this, but there are different ways. So we right now we use the Scrum board, and we use Scrum, the Scrum model with sprints, etc. Jira can just as easily handle Kanban, and Kanban is continuous improvement. So there are no, it's not time boxed. There are no sprints.
I thought Kanban is just these 4 vertical columns basically, which says to do, doing, done, code review. No?
Well, so the board that we use is, I think it actually, I think you're right, it is a Kanban or Kanban-like board, but the difference, the approach that you take is different. There are, I mean, we've started using swim lanes. I think in Kanban they're very important because there should be no more than, let's say, 2 tasks at any one point in any one column. So if the swim lane gets blocked, then it's everybody's job to switch over to that swim lane and unblock it. But the biggest difference, I think, at least as far as we're concerned, is that there would be no sprints. We would just continuously work on whatever improvements the client requests or that we ourselves see as necessary.
Okay.
Okay. So let us officially start the sprint then.
Yeah. Do you think we are still in the model that supports sprints, or that we should think about switching to this Kanban?
You know, I think we could do it for this sprint, and maybe we could have done it for the last. But I think once we start working on phase 1, and there will be client-requested stories with very specific priorities to them, I think the Scrum model works better for that.
Okay.
But this is open to discussion. Like I said, Pavel is the man that you should talk to about this, and you know he'll give you his thoughts and at least a better explanation on what the differences are.
Okay.
Okay, Sprint 9. Rails, Rails, Rails. 8 issues included.
Cool.
So obviously, let's focus on why am I not seeing? Oh, here, other issues. Obviously, let's wrap up the things that we have started working on before we switch over to the new ones. But I think, as Brian said, that should be fairly straightforward from here on, and then we can move on to the user model.
Is that 322 still relevant as a subtask of 288?
322, discuss refactor partners controller instantiates. Okay, so that's the, oh, sorry, I guess I didn't need to create the facade task because that is essentially what that is.
But that was discussed.
That was discussed, yeah.
Oh, discuss. Okay, right. Well, we've discussed it then. There we go. If only it was always that easy, huh? Okay, so there it is.
Cool.
We're now in Sprint 9. Pavel is probably watching this video and shuddering at my incompetence with Jira. Oh yeah, another thing, I don't know if you guys saw it earlier in Slack. So Sam Joseph from Agile Ventures, he's been very interested in talking about the different projects within Agile Ventures to the entire AV community, and now that OSRA is in production, he is keen to get us to present OSRA at one of the AV sort of global meetings or whatever they're called. So we need to think about, first of all, when we would like to do that, how we would like to do that, what we would like to talk about, you know, what kind of things might be interesting to the rest of the community, etc. I think we can leave that for another day, but let's have a think about it and maybe come back to it tomorrow.
Okay.
Unless somebody has good, strong ideas right now.
So what are the options? Either they come to our Scrum, which is not entirely likely, or we go to their Scrum?
Well, they are. It's not they. It's us, really.
It's us. Yeah, I know. That was poor phrasing, but
Right. I think time is more or less up to us. So because it's us doing the presenting, we can choose what time is convenient for us, and it doesn't even have to be the entire team that is there. I suppose it's just somebody doing the talking, basically. So we can tell them. I mean, I mentioned to Sam that most likely the time around our usual scrums is probably what would work best for everybody on our team. But I think it's fairly flexible.
yeah, I guess if I followed this dialogue correctly, Sam said that he wouldn't be able to attend ours. I mean, the Scrum at this time.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
too late for him.
Well, I've never been to one of these. I've never watched one of these presentations before. I don't know if they're really more of a kind of one person talking and everybody listening, or if they're more in the Q&A format, or if there isn't any kind of established format for these.
Is this a presentation for the code or for the application, how it works?
Well, that's something that we can think about. When I heard about it, I mean, we're presenting this to Agile Ventures, which is primarily composed of developers. So developers are most likely interested in the code. But the other aspect of it that I thought might be interesting to talk about is our development process. Because
I guess when I went to one of the recent Atlantic Scrums, just by chance, and I mentioned OSRA, and I said that we moved from, we are thinking about and we're trying to move from ActiveAdmin to pure Rails. One of the questions was why. So that would be one of the interesting questions. Like, what are the limitations of ActiveAdmin?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe even the whole history, because I don't even know myself this history. Why did you decide to go with ActiveAdmin in the first place? And then what made you think about switching and actually trying to switch eventually?
Yeah. What was it? Do you remember who asked that question?
Oh, Thomas.
Yeah. He was the one who made a decision to answer the question.
Thomas?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because in the early days, it was basically Modusum all by himself, and he just came. Well, I think he was already part of Agile Ventures, but he had this idea for a project, and he contacted Thomas, who is the sort of the key figure within Agile Ventures. And if you look at at the list of committers for Agile Ventures, for OSRA on GitHub, he is the earliest committer, and he still holds the record for lines of code committed. That is because he created the repo. And I think as step 2, he added ActiveAdmin to it. So I'm guessing that, based on what Modusum described to him at the time, he thought that ActiveAdmin was a good framework for that, and indeed for quite a long time it was, until we started doing things that were more complicated than it allows. But yeah, I think something like that would be a very interesting discussion, and even talking about the process of how do you take a major component of your application and replace it with code that you've written from scratch. What we're doing right now, I think that's something that warrants discussion. Yeah. Okay, so let's come back to this tomorrow over the next couple of days, and then we can give Sam some kind of a rough idea of when and what we would like to talk about, and go ahead from that.
Good.
Okay. Anything else to discuss tonight?
I have a question for the OSRA Heroku app. Do we have an account for developers to look around?
To look around, to actually log into the application?
Yes.
Yeah, I set up, did I, during the client meeting when we were launching the application, I collected emails from, there were the three people from the client side and from some developers, but I don't recall who's, I know Craig and Brian, I'm pretty sure you're in it.
Craig, Brian, and Nick. And
Yeah,
Paul.
I wasn't there.
Okay. Yeah, if you send me your emails, I'll
Okay.
add you.
I'll write it in the Slack and when you have time.
Yeah, send me a private message on Slack. That's better than
Sure.
probably anything. Yeah.
No rush.
Don't forget to change your password as soon as he adds you.
Yeah, yeah, because I'll add you with some kind of, well, it doesn't matter. It might be a random string. That's a strong password anyway, but yeah.
Okay.
So Nick, how do you plan who's doing what now from that sprint?
Well, who's doing what? Basically, in general, stories are up for grabs. Back when we used to actually work on point stories, we assigned them to people because we sort of had this responsibility to the client. Since at the moment we're working on things that are more in our interest, we haven't been doing that. And the other point is that OSRA 327 and OSRA 328 will have about a dozen subtasks each, but they're not there yet. So we can easily assign somebody to OSRA 310 and OSRA 324. But after that, I think we're in this kind of free-for-all mode that if you're interested in something, in a particular subtask for one of these epic stories, then create the subtask and start working on it. Assign it to yourself and start working on it.
Yeah, so I guess personally I'd be quite interested in trying some of the Rails stuff, but on the user model as it's going to be the easier one. But I would guess that you know, I'm not going to be doing that all by myself. That would be, you know, collaborating with someone else, and I'd be keen also to really understand what sort of things were done on the partner model, because I wasn't following it very closely.
Yeah.
So if you know, if someone had a bit of time to bring me up to speed on that, just about the way things were done, then that would be useful.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely not me because in this room I'm the one who did by far the least. I didn't do anything, as a matter of fact. If you look at who the tasks were assigned to. What can I recommend you, Robbie? You can have a look. First of all, you can look at all the subtasks for OSRA 244, and that gives you some idea of the individual components that had to come together. And I would then say that if you have a particular interest or questions about something that, you know, whether it was Brian or Craig or Andre that worked on it, then, you know, they're the person to talk to. I think,
Okay.
Brian,
Yeah,
can
I'll
I
certainly
make you the responsible person overall?
Sure.
Sorry, say that again?
If you want to talk about the overall strategy for OSRA 288 or kind of a you know, bird's eye view of everything that was done, then Brian is probably the best person to talk to.
Okay.
Because he's been leading the way on the switch to Rails.
Okay. But Brian, would you have any time tomorrow afternoon? Well, it's supposed to be morning for you.
Let's see. I'm free probably after, I want to say 5 UTC.
Right. So what time are our scrums? UTC.
8.
8.
8 okay, so I'm in UTC then, okay, because it's 8 o'clock. So, right, from about 5 o'clock, yeah, okay. I'll have a look through tomorrow and maybe try and get a chance to just get a bird's eye view from you about what needs to be done and everything. That'd be useful.
Okay.
Thanks. The other one there, Nick, which was the father's name not appearing on the upload, I think should be fairly straightforward. The only thing, I mean, I could do that, but I wasn't sure which field to use because I presume it's either a combination of the two fields or it's one of the new two fields that have been put in place. You know which it should be?
Yeah, just let me make sure that I understand what the issue is. Looking at, okay, so if I remember overall, I would say that maybe the father's full name would be the most appropriate in there. But you know, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what's more valuable to the client. The father's, if you cannot do father's full name, then is it more valuable for them to see father's first name or the family name? I really couldn't say. So I would start by trying to show either the full name or both the first name and the family name. And
so what is the full name? What is the full name? Is it a concatenation of the father given name and family name?
That's correct, yes.
Right, okay. And does it need to put a space in between, or what way are they? Because Arabic's the other way, isn't it? Do you?
Well, you just, I think you can just concatenate them, and then when it's rendered, then it's rendered correctly from right to left.
But you have to, which way do you concatenate them? A plus B or B plus A?
You concatenate father given name plus family name.
Father given name plus family name.
Or at least that's how we've been doing it so far.
Right.
And the client hasn't raised any concerns about that.
Okay, yeah. So I'll have a look at that in the morning then, yeah.
Okay. If you're going to start working on that, Robbie, please remember to assign yourself to it.
Yeah, I'll do that.
All right.
Yeah, make sure you if you're working on it, because otherwise someone else might start working on it.
Yeah. I'll do that tonight.
All right. Well, Robbie, if you're certain that you're going to take this, then we can assign you right now.
Yeah, give it to me right now if you want to. Or do you want me? I'll just do it myself, actually, Nick. Don't worry.
Okay, sure. Okay, are we done? Sounds like it. Okay, so off with Sprint 9. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.